There is an inherent friction built into modern travel. We have a deep desire to seek out authentic, unscripted experiences, but abandoning the beaten path means willingly accepting the vulnerability of navigating an unfamiliar environment with incomplete information. This leaves you with a difficult dilemma. You want to embrace the romantic ideal of going where the wind takes you, but the further you step away from the grid, the fewer safety nets exist. How do you find those hidden spots without turning yourself into an easy target? This chart maps out exactly how that risk scales. We evaluate exposure along two specific axes. We track environmental isolation on the y-axis, which ranges from urban centers to complete off-grid wilderness. On the x-axis, we track social vulnerability, ranging from traveling in large groups down to being entirely solo. Look at what happens when high environmental isolation intersects with high social vulnerability in this upper right quadrant. Standard social rules evaporate up here. Help is not coming, and witnesses do not exist. In this specific zone, the social intuition we rely on in cities can quickly become a liability. Navigating these gaps safely requires a shift from reactive instinct toward a set of deliberate, predetermined boundaries. Back in the late 70s, an Anchorage bartender regularly served a mild-mannered guy. He was polite, a little shy, and tipped incredibly well. After building a rapport over the bar, this friendly local invited her to a birthday party at his remote cabin in the Matanuska Valley. He leaned heavily on his polite demeanor and even offered to personally drive her out there. She declined. Years later, she saw his name on the television. Her polite regular was Robert Hansen. He took at least 17 women out to his shack in that exact valley, released them into the wilderness, and actively hunted them for sport. Meanwhile, in Northern California, a photographer and his girlfriend took a wrong turn into a complete cellular dead zone. While they were pulled over trying to calculate their position, a tall, older man in a rusty pickup truck blocked them in from behind. In both encounters, the individual used a veneer of social politeness as a tool to leverage geographical isolation. They didn't lead with a threat. They led with a suggestion designed to separate their targets from their safety nets. In both cases, avoiding tragedy required zero physical fighting skills. Survival came strictly from implementing strict, unemotional boundaries against seemingly polite overtures. Let's break down the exact point of failure for the California couple. They entered an unfamiliar, highly isolated area without a definitive geographical orientation. That specific failure forced them to stop on an empty road to calculate their position, which made them a stationary target. This flowchart illustrates the remote interaction protocol. The absolute first tier of defense is the pre-trip navigational lock. Before leaving urban infrastructure, you must download offline topographical maps, pinpoint cellular dead zones, and identify populated, safe stocking points. Doing this completely eliminates the necessity of stopping off the shoulder of a rural road to ask a passing stranger for directions. You remove the primary catalyst for a predatory encounter before you ever turn the ignition key. This protocol comes with a severe trade-off. It requires significant, tedious hours of pre-planning, and it inherently limits your ability to randomly explore an interesting dirt road on a whim. You sacrifice the romantic notion of getting lost to find yourself. That is the mandatory price of admission for safe navigation in high isolation environments. We see a different manipulation tactic in the Alaska case. The predator relied on making a polite request to move his target from a public, controlled environment, the bar, into an isolated, uncontrolled environment at his cabin. The required input to counter this is simple but rigid. You must issue a categorical, uncompromising refusal to any private or off-grid invitation from an individual you have not thoroughly vetted. Tracking this on our decision tree, when a stranger requests a location change, it triggers an immediate denial, stopping the sequence. This completely neutralizes the predator's primary advantage, which relies entirely on maintaining geographical control and isolation. Executing this protocol in real life generates extreme social friction. You have to look a seemingly friendly, smiling local directly in the eye and reject their hospitality. It causes acute social awkwardness. The Alaska bartender prioritized her professional boundaries over social compliance. That single choice to endure an awkward moment mathematically prevented her from becoming Hansen's next victim. Enduring a brief moment of deep social discomfort is an incredibly low price to pay to avoid yielding your geographical control to a stranger. Now we look at the worst-case scenario. You are already stopped off the grid, and a stranger unexpectedly approaches your position. exactly like the tall man in the pickup truck did in California. You immediately execute 3 physical inputs. Lock all doors instantly, ensure the engine remains running, and if you absolutely must speak to them, refuse to roll the window down more than 1 single inch. You are looking for the immediate trigger to flee. Listen for aggressive insistence to break your physical barrier, like demanding you get out of your car, or deliberate misinformation. The California couple later learned their guide was directing them 20 miles toward a dead end, not their actual destination. The trade-off for this protocol is that you instantly signal outward distrust. It aggressively escalates the tension of the encounter and makes casual conversation impossible. The California couple only survived because the girlfriend completely bypassed social pleasantries. She forcefully initiated the vehicle locks and demanded her boyfriend hit the gas. As they sped away, the man cackled and shouted, "You made the right choice." When you operate in a cellular dead zone, your vehicle ceases to be transportation. You treat it strictly as a mobile physical barricade. The overarching lesson from these accounts is straightforward. Politeness is merely a social construct. Survival is a non-negotiable biological imperative. This scorecard calculates how you implement these protocols based on your specific vulnerability level. Under the solo standard, every single protocol we've discussed is a mandatory baseline. The trade-off of serendipity is off the table when venturing into isolated areas alone. Under the group standard, traveling in numbers provides a marginal physical buffer, but even with that buffer, the Vehicle Fortress protocol remains an absolute requirement. When you calculate the return on investment of maintaining these strict boundaries, the math favors the cautious. The emotional cost of being perceived as rude is infinitely cheaper than the physical cost of being a victim. The core friction you will face out in the real world is psychological. Implementing these safety rules will inevitably make you feel paranoid in the moment, but look at the scale of these environments. When you are a solitary point of vulnerability surrounded by miles of silence, paranoia is just another word for situational awareness. When the grid disappears, you must trust your preparation and your protocols. You never trust the smile of a friendly local. In the final calculation of travel optimization, returning home safely outweighs the value of any single authentic experience.